Hello to all of you wonderful women in Kentucky. I am just so thrilled that I get to do this and that I get to teach you all the way. I currently live in Texas, so technology is amazing. I love how creative we are being, despite all of the craziness that coronavirus has brought. I'm thankful for the creativity and the opportunity that I have to come and teach you today. So, my name is Jessie McKinley. I am obsessed with my ancestors and I love teaching people and getting them excited about ways to do family history that maybe they hadn't ever thought of before, and just really to get excited to learn about your ancestors because I truly believe that they love you so much and there are so many blessings that can come from doing your family history. So, the rest of my presentation will be on Google Slides, so you won't be able to see my face, but I just wanted to pop on and show you who I am so that you can kind of put a face to the voice that you're hearing. And if you have any questions at the end of my presentation, I will put my contact info there so that you can reach out to me. I would love to help you with anything or just hear about your experience. So without further ado, let's jump into the class. I absolutely love the theme that you guys have chosen for your conference from Colossians chapter 2, verse 7. Rooted and built up in him and established in the faith as ye have been taught, abounding therein with thanksgiving. And I think this scripture can really be related to a lot of things in our lives, but since I'm teaching a class on family history, I just want to talk about how I really believe that family history is an act of faith. We have to put a lot of faith in God that what he has told us about the spirit world and our ancestors and temple work, so many things require a lot of faith because we can't see anything that's going on. But I believe that when we participate in this holy work, that we will be blessed and we will abound with thanksgiving. So here we go. Here's a little bit about me. You saw me just a minute ago in my intro. This is my husband Daniel and I on our wedding day, which was we just celebrated our 12th anniversary. We got married in the Manti, Utah temple, which in my opinion is the most beautiful temple in the world. We have 5 children. We're done having kids. We have 5 kids. Our oldest is 11, down to our babies 2. It is a busy time, especially with coronavirus, virtual learning. All of my kids are trying to figure out all of that. So it's a busy time in our lives, but we are happy and blessed. This is just a little more about me. So in the top right corner, that's all of our crazy family. That's what we look like 90% of the time. We've got a big dog. Her name's Lucy. She's an Airedale Terrier, and it's chaotic. We've got 4 little boys, and our daughter is their second oldest, but it's crazy. Top left is my baby Frankie when he was born, and I love all of my babies, but the last one is especially special, and I just love that picture. So I'm going to explain a little bit more in a few slides how I got into family history. But if you have no idea who I am, you can check out my podcast, which I haven't added to in a while. But I have about 25 episodes where I interviewed amazing women all about family history and how they fit it into their lives. So you can just go to whatever podcast app you use to listen to and search the Miss Genealogy podcast. You'll find it there. And then if you're on Instagram, my Instagram account is @MissGenealogy, and if you search your hashtags, you can search Spirit World Sneak Peek, which you see here in the bottom left corner. And that's just something not only am I obsessed with my ancestors, but I'm also obsessed with learning about the spirit world. So any time I found a really awesome quote or learned something about the spirit world, I would add it to my Instagram and attach that hashtag. So if you'd like to learn more about the spirit world, you can definitely check that out. Another thing that I've done is I had a lot of ancestors, family members with big histories, big books filled with so many great stories about our ancestors, but I was pretty sure that 90% of my family would never ever read it. I would read it because I love learning about my ancestors and love history and learning about the things that they dealt with in their lives. But I think I'm the only one out of all my siblings, and it's just not something that a lot of people will sit down and read. So I wanted to create something that was simpler, especially for my kids, to just get them interested a little bit in my ancestors. So I used to work for the company Chatbooks. They're a wonderful company. And I would I took a picture of each ancestor. So I picked a line. This right here, you can see my great-grandparents, Vic and Fern. And on each page, the book is just 60 pages long, and on each page I would put a picture of one ancestor, and then on the opposite side would have their name and some facts about their life. So very simple, definitely not comprehensive, but it gives just a little glimpse, and I feel like so many more people are more inclined to look through this than they are the giant histories, which there's nothing wrong with those, like I said before. But this is just something that I've done, and I teach a class, an online class, about how to find the photos and stories and compile it all into a nice little chapbook. So that's another thing that I have done. I love my Grandma Carol. She lives up in Rexburg, Idaho. She's my dad's mom. She had 8 children, and I have always been very grateful for her influence in teaching me to love my ancestors. Whenever we were together, we are a very large family. There's lots and lots of aunts and uncles and siblings and grandchildren. But whenever we were together, she was very, very adamant that she taught us about our ancestors. So we would go visit their cemeteries, or we'd go visit the cemeteries and visit their headstones. We would listen to her tell us stories, or sometimes even my aunts and uncles would act out the stories of different things that happened in my ancestors' lives. She was very creative, and she was also very consistent about teaching us about them. And as a teenager, I would often roll my eyes and think, Grandma, we don't need to hear these stories again. But as I got older, I had my first 2 babies were 19 months apart, and it was very difficult. We had just moved to a small town in Utah. I felt alone. I felt like I had no idea what I was doing, and it was a struggle to have 2 kids who were far enough apart that they were at different stages, and it was just a lot. It was a lot to handle. And I had a prompting that I should start getting into family history. So I went to my class, and that was about 10 years ago. And since then, I have just learned so much, and it has been a very huge blessing in my life. And I think that if I hadn't had those experiences with my grandma, that it would have been a lot harder for me to maybe feel the spirit of Elijah and understand the importance of knowing about my ancestors. So anything that you can do to teach your kids or your grandkids about your ancestors, I definitely think that it is something that will pay off. Because of, like I said, my grandma would take us to the cemeteries, this has become a big tradition in my family and something that I love to do with my children. And I have always had a very positive experience in cemeteries, and I'm trying to help my children realize that they are a special and amazing place where we can go to honor the people that have come before us and who have paved the way for us. I just think it's incredible. This is my husband's grandpa, Ralph, and his grandma, Katie. And grandpa passed away a few years ago, but before he did, I took it upon myself to scan and document the hundreds and hundreds, probably thousands even, of photographs that he had in boxes all over his house. He loved to take pictures. He was in the Air Force, and he traveled like crazy, and he had some pretty amazing stories to tell. But I had a feeling that as soon as he passed away, the photos would get scattered, and it would be really hard to track everything down. So a few years before he passed, I was able to document things, gain his trust, and so that he would let me take the boxes of photos, because I don't know if you've experienced this, but sometimes the older generation gets really, really attached to their photos, and they don't want anything to happen to them, which is totally understandable. But when you keep asking and talking to them, and they see that you're trustworthy and that you're really interested in going to take care of their photos, that you will most likely gain their trust and be able to document these photographs so that they don't get lost in the shuffle when people pass away. This on the left is my great-grandma Wanda, and I've always felt very connected to her, but I knew almost nothing about her. If you follow me on Instagram, you might have learned a little bit about this story, but there were a lot of tragic things that happened to her in her life, and because of that, my grandma just hasn't really opened up about her. But I have been so fascinated by her, and I've tried to learn as much as I can about her. And a couple of years ago, my grandma Wanda's baby sister Vanez, which you can see in the bottom picture is her in the middle. It was her 90th birthday party, and because I've shown this interest in my grandma Wanda. My grandma invited me to this party, and I got to meet some distant cousins, which you can see in the top picture, that I have never met before. And just one more, I'm just trying to illustrate all these different things that can happen when you begin to show an interest in your ancestors, because like I've said many times, I just believe that the more we show our interest in them, the more that we can be blessed and that they can influence our lives here right now. This is one more cool example. I gave my parents DNA kits for Christmas, and they were able to meet up with my mom's long-lost cousin. They had no idea that he existed, and because of DNA, they were able to track him down, which was a really neat experience for my mom's entire family. So neat things can happen when you show an interest. This is the last story that I want to share with you about kind of just giving you a background of how I've become interested in family history and all the neat things that have happened. I mean, I guess just a glimpse of the neat things, because there's so many, too many to count. But my grandma Carol, who I introduced you to at the very beginning, her husband Joe was part Lebanese. And ever since I was a little girl, I've always been very, very proud of that fact, that I am 1/16 Lebanese. I would tell everybody that. I still tell people that because I am very connected to my Lebanese heritage, and I just think it's so cool. So to make a very long story short, I was a nanny in North Carolina before I got married. And after I had my third child, my husband and I took him out and we went to visit my aunt and uncle. And right before that, I made lots of connections that my Lebanese ancestors have some descendants living in North Carolina. So I was able to meet up with them. Aggie, you can see with the white hair in the bottom right picture. She was in her 90s, and she cooked us an authentic Lebanese meal. It was delicious, and it truly was such a magical night to be able to pull up pictures that both of us had and to connect stories, connect the dots between these very mysterious things that happened. And it was just a testimony builder to me that when we put forth the effort, our ancestors on the other side can help put pieces together of puzzles that may have been unknown for a very, very long time. So I still keep in contact with them. They are incredible people, and it was just something that I will definitely never forget. So here's a question for you. How are you choosing to spend your time? I know that every single one of us have been given unique and special gifts from God, and we have interests and hobbies, and aside from everything else that we have going on in our lives, it's important to do things that help us to feel fulfilled. And so I love thinking about what are the hobbies that I'm already drawn to, and how can I shift that to maybe include family history. So just a few examples. Say you're an artist and you love to paint or draw. How could you spin that into incorporating family history? So for me, my ancestors came from Lebanon. One thing that I really want to be able to do is to paint a picture of their village that they came from in Lebanon and hang that somewhere in my house. Or say you're into music, you could learn a piece of music that comes from the culture or the land that your ancestors came from. If you're a dancer, you could learn a cultural dance from, hopefully this is sparking some things. If you're a singer, you could make up a song about your ancestors or learn a song from that part of the world that your ancestors come from. And I love this quote from President Nelson. He talks about how we can be inspired all day long about temple and family history experiences others have had, but we must do something to actually experience the joy ourselves, and I testify that that is true. So he extends a challenge to figure out how you can what can you sacrifice in your life to make more time to do family history and temple work this year. And ultimately, for most of us, that sacrifice is going to be time. And there's just so many blessings, which we will get to in just a minute. Really quick, you can take a screenshot of this or write these down really quick. These are my top 8 favorite family history apps. So you can definitely learn about these. This would be a whole other class to teach you about all the different things you can do on these apps, but I just want to get this on your radar. If you are technology savvy, you can use these apps with yourself or your kids, grandkids, and there can be a lot of fun things. I'll illustrate some in the slides to come. So this is through the Family Search Memories app, and you can see on the top how there's all different, right here, photos, stories, documents. There's all different tabs that you can click on. When you go to the audio section, you have a chance to just upload audio files. Or what I did was at a family reunion, I opened up this app, I passed around my phone, and my aunts and uncles took turns telling stories about anyone that they could remember, happy or sad memories. I mean, it just kind of went all across the board. But just to tell the younger generations about the people that they knew. And it was a very awesome experience. And then it all gets saved to Family Search. So anyone who is related to these people will be able to listen to these memories. So very, very cool. This is another fun thing that especially I found the youth get really excited about this. But Google Earth has, Google Earth is amazing. You can see pretty much anywhere in the world. So if you have any documentation, I think where I found this address was on a World War II draft card. So one of my husband's ancestors, there was a family full of boys, and they all signed up for the draft, and they all put different addresses. And I was able to find this home in Connecticut. I had this photograph that I had scanned in from one of my husband's grandma's pictures, and then I was able to find this. This is a screenshot that I took from Google Earth, how it currently looks today. So that can be fun to see if the house is still standing, and what you can see that some adjustments have been made, but it's definitely the same house. So that's a fun thing that the youth especially love to do. I love this quote from President Henry B. Eyring. He says, "Remember that the names which will be so difficult to find are of real people to whom you owe your existence in this world, and whom you will meet again in the spirit world. When you are baptized, your ancestors look down on you with hope. Perhaps after centuries, they rejoice to see one of their descendants make a covenant to find them and to offer their freedom. Their hearts are bound to you. Their hope is in your hands. You will have more than your own strength as you choose to labor on to find them." I testify that that's true. And it is just such a beautiful thing. This is a really long quote. I won't read everything, but this is from Elder Rasband. And in case I haven't sparked your interest or gotten you at least a little bit curious about doing family history, here are a lot of blessings that Elder Rasband promises when we lay claim to these healing blessings promised by prophets and apostles. So some of them are increased understanding of the Savior and his atoning sacrifice, increased faith, increased refining, sanctifying, and moderating influences in our hearts, increased joy, increased family blessings, increased love and appreciation for ancestors and living relatives so we no longer feel alone, which I feel like especially during this quarantine and all of the crazy things that are happening in our world today, this is especially important because I myself have struggled with this a lot, with feeling alone and not connected to people. But when I take the time to learn about my ancestors and try to find temple work to do for them, or really just learn about them, I definitely feel like I have an increased love and appreciation for them, and I don't feel so alone. This list is amazing, and I think it's such a good reminder that no matter where we fall on the spectrum of wanting to get into family history or not, if we can just have faith that if we do it, we will be blessed with maybe some or all of these blessings, it is definitely, definitely worth it. So here's just a few tips. Like I said before, I could take pretty much any of these categories and spend a whole class teaching you all about it, but I just want to briefly touch on a few different things that I have done to find temple work for my ancestors. So if you create a timeline for your people, I think this is a really fantastic exercise to do to make sure that there's no missing people in your family tree. Because one of the biggest excuses that I hear from people is that everything's been done, or they don't know where to start, or they don't have the time, and we've kind of touched on those things already. But if you just pick one couple at a time in your family tree and make sure that everything has been accounted for, you might be amazed at what you find. So every 10 years, they still conduct a census record, and then other things to search for are birth, marriage, and death records. So this is just a little example. These are my husband's ancestors, the McKinley family. On Family Search, I think there were 7 children listed, or maybe only 6 when I first started researching into this family. And then I found this 1900 census, and as you can see in the red, there were 3 daughters that were not listed on Family Search. So I was able to add them into Family Search. I was able to do the temple work for each of them, and I felt especially connected. You can see the top box says Jessie. So her name was Jessie McKinley, which is my name, and I felt it was just a real honor to do this temple work for them. But you can also see over here on the right side, the big white arrow is pointing to the 13 and 9. So in a lot of the censuses, it will show you how many children the wife had and then how many of those children are living. So Martha had 13 children and 9 were currently living. So there's another clue that if Family Search only has 6 or 7 children listed, then there's definitely people missing and I need to figure out who they are. So I just tracked this specific family through the census. I found them again in 1910. You can see a lot of the same names. And then 1920 significantly gets smaller because a lot of those children get married and have children of their own. And then here they are again in the 1930 census where more people have come back. You can see there's a daughter, a granddaughter, a son. And so I think I've been able to add about 15 members to this family that were not listed on Family Search. So quick example of something you can do to make sure everybody in your family has been accounted for. And here they are one more time in the 1940. So a few other helpful tips. If you have someone in your family with a unique name, such as Estelle instead of Mary, it's a lot easier to find records for someone with a more unique name. Look for people born in the early 1800s. That's kind of my specialty, as I love searching for someone in the early 1800s because there's just so many records and so many things that you can find. And then if they were older than 20 and they don't have a spouse listed, I would look for a possible spouse. Sometimes it's really tricky to find women especially, but that can be another clue to help you realize that your family tree may not be complete. And then over here on the left side, you can see Family Search has a bunch of different icons that give you basically like hints on what you could do to further complete your family tree on Family Search. Here's just a little graphic showing you that there are so many people, especially cousins. So a cousin is, in this case, described as like one of your direct line ancestors. It would be brothers and sisters of your direct line ancestors or descendants of the above. So it's kind of mind-blowing, but to realize that you have at least, in 6 generations, there's approximately 63 direct line ancestors versus 38,000 descendants or cousins. So when I hear people say everything's been done, I have to laugh inside because there's absolutely no way that it's all been done. And even if by some miracle it actually is all done and there's no missing people at all in your tree, I think getting to know them, seeing the photos and the stories of the people who came before you is very powerful. And when you don't know those things, you're missing out on so many blessings. So just a few other tips. Look in newspapers, do a Google search, look at what was happening historically and during church history just to kind of fit the pieces of your ancestors' life back together and learn as much as you can about them. I'm a big Harry Potter fan, so I love this quote when Harry sees his parents for the first time in the mirror. And it says, Harry was so close to the mirror now that his nose was nearly touching that of his reflection. Mom, he whispered, Dad, they just looked at him, smiling. And slowly, Harry looked into the faces of the other people in the mirror and saw other pairs of green eyes just like his, other noses like his, even a little old man who looked as though he had Harry's knobby knees. Harry was looking at his family for the first time in his life. And, sorry, my voice. I'm getting a little raspy here. But I love this, and I think it's so powerful, and the same can be true for you. When you learn about your ancestors and find their photos and stories, I think you can have this exact same experience as Harry. So these are my 4 great-grandmas. From left to right, there's Fern, Edith, Wanda, and Clarissa. And this quote from Hannah Sinesh just kind of sums up how I feel about each of them. I knew a few of them in my life, and but I feel very connected to each of them, and I think that they can offer me so much wisdom, and they have so much love for me. And I think the same is true for you, for your ancestors and those who have come before you. There are stars whose radiance is visible on earth, though they have long been extinct. There are people whose brilliance continues to light the world, even though they are no longer among the living. These lights are particularly bright when the night is dark. They light the way for humankind. I have a worksheet that I'm going to send out in addition to this class. So I would love if you could read through it, and really, as you're reading, write down anything that comes to mind, highlight any of her words that stand out to you. She is an incredible champion for family history work. I love Sister Nelson, and I love her thoughts on the topic of family history. So please read that worksheet, and I would love to hear what you think. I'm pretty sure this is my last quote. This is a scripture. It comes from 2 Kings chapter 6, verses 16 to 17, and it says, "Fear not, for they that be with us are more than they that be with them." And Elisha prayed and said, "Lord, I pray thee, open his eyes, that he may see." And the Lord opened the eyes of the young man, and he saw, and behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire round about Elisha. And this quote comes from Elder Holland. He says, "In the gospel of Jesus Christ, you have help from both sides of the veil, and you must never forget that. When disappointment and discouragement strike, and they will, you remember and never forget that if our eyes could be opened, we would see horses and chariots of fire as far as the eye can see, riding at reckless speed to come to our protection. They will always be there, these armies of heaven, in defense of Abraham's seed." I testify that this is true. I know, and I have such a strong testimony, that when we put forth effort, even if it's a tiny, tiny bit, even if we can only spare a few minutes a week or a month to learn about our ancestors, that we will start to see blessings in our lives, and we will feel more connected to them, and we will have well, I can't speak for each of you, but for me, it has been an incredible experience, and I hope that something I've said may have sparked an idea and gotten your creative wheels turning, and you can think about family history in a different way so that you can make it work for you. And I say that in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.